What do you need to homeschool your child? Have you wondered that? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I actually homeschooled all 4 of my children. I also am known for teaching parenting all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about the basics of homeschooling. Many people worry that homeschooling requires a lot of supplies and a lot of money. And you know what? That's just not true. In this video, we're going to be talking about what you really need to homeschool and maybe dispose of some of those myths that might be getting in your way. I never thought I would be a homeschool mom. I just have to say that. My dad was a public school teacher, a university professor. My family was full of teachers, really good ones. I really excelled at the public school. I thrived there, did all the things that a person should do that goes to the public school as far as to show signs of success, whether academically or even socially. I did all the things. So I was a very unlikely candidate for choosing homeschool for my family. But there was a time when I realized that my children were going to be bored at school just like I was. And I wanted them to have something more. I also realized that there was something happening in our family. We were doing therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. They had to go to school. They were going to come home at a certain time every day. And I wanted my children to have enough time just with me as mom. And so we made the decision to homeschool them. And this was something that, nobody makes lightly. I mean, I prayed about it. I thought about it. I thought, am I enough? And then I go to my first homeschool conference and the keynote speaker says, you can learn everything K through 12 in 4 years if you love learning. I was like, what? 4 years? And then I thought back to all of the years that I was bored at school, to all of the times where I hoped to learn something new and I didn't. All the reviews in all the math books, all those things. And I realized, I think they're right. In fact, they'd done some studies, so that was based on a study, but they also shared another thing that was, if you're an adult and you've never learned to read, so you're completely illiterate, you can go from illiterate to literate in 80 hours if you want to. So it just required desire. And I thought, well, can I teach my children to love learning and to desire learning? And I thought, yeah, I can do that because I love learning. So here we go. One thing that you want to do is decide, what is your vision for this? What do you hope your outcome will be? Are you doing this because you're trying to stay away from something, or you're doing this because you want something? Now, at first, I did this because I wanted something. I wanted a certain relationship with my children. And I wanted my children to not be bored in school because they were reading at age 3, and I recognized that was going to probably be a problem, learning colors in kindergarten. I wanted a certain thing, but then as time went by, I realized I also didn't like some of the social things. I also didn't like some of the things being taught at the school and the way that the school was structured and how much time the school took away from our lives. Because remember, I had foster children and they were going to the school. And I realized there were actually a lot of reasons that I was doing this. But the number one reason was for our family unity. I hope that's one of the things that you want, is a certain type of family that cares about each other, is bonded together, communicates well, plays well. Create a picture in your mind of what it is that you're going for. Because people that homeschool and don't have a vision of what they're going for usually can't maintain it longer than about 4 years. So if you want to go the distance with it, then make sure you know why you're doing it and what type of an adult you're hoping to create. And don't keep that information to yourself either. Make sure that at the right time, you tell your children why you're doing it too. Make sure they know why there's a difference between their schooling and all of the other children around them that are being schooled differently. And then have fun. You do not need an expensive curriculum to be a great homeschooler. What you need is just a philosophy. So there is something called leadership education that I started studying when I first started learning about homeschool. So first I read the books of Charlotte Mason. I read Penny Gardner's book about homeschooling, The Charlotte Mason Way. I read Karen Andriola's books about homeschooling, The Charlotte Mason Way, before I ever even got to Charlotte Mason's actual writings about schooling and about education. And then I read the book A Thomas Jefferson Education by Oliver DeMille. That book took Charlotte Mason's ideas and put them in a beautiful formula. Now, it wasn't just Charlotte Mason, because there were other ideas that he had also collected as he had studied education, and he put them together in a beautiful formula. It was a philosophy of education that I could believe, I could follow. A curriculum is not good enough because it's not a philosophy. You don't know why you're doing what you're doing. I spent the majority of my time studying the books of Oliver DeMille, like A Thomas Jefferson Education, The Phases of Learning, A Thomas Jefferson Education Companion, TJ Ed for Teens, a lot of his talks, his audio classes, those types of things, what I spent my time learning, as well as reading Fenelon and Holt and Erickson and a lot of the different great minds in education, so that I could find the principles of education and learn how people learn. Now, you don't have to do all of that. In fact, I've distilled a ton of it down at my website, heartofhomeschool.net. So you can go there, and it's actually free to get all of the stuff there, which is really fantastic. I did that for people during COVID when everyone had to start homeschooling. And normally I am known for self-government, and I just talk at homeschool conferences, some of the biggest homeschool conferences in the world, actually. If you ever find yourself at any of the great homeschool conventions, I am always there. Those are some fantastic conventions for homeschooling. At those conferences, I am usually asked to talk about parenting. Why? Because parenting is a huge part of homeschooling. And I teach all about self-government parenting, calm practices, skills that children and parents can use to communicate better in a self-governed way. When people know how to communicate in their home, they'll be successful. So develop the why. Learn about education and how people learn. Figure out what your philosophy is for how people learn. And study some Oliver DeMille. I recommend it. Then prepare yourself for how to communicate as a family. And remember, you don't have to have all this done before you start. You can start learning and then keep learning along the way. Then have fun. Read books to your children. Pick things like Aesop's Fables and Little House on the Prairie, and books that have really deep worth and classical value. Those types of books will strengthen your children for years to come. Discuss the books. Create projects that relate to those books. Get a book called Family Math if your children are young, and start learning the basics of math no matter which level of math that you're at. Later, move into maybe Saxon math or do math inspirations. Maybe decide to pick up a foreign language, or not. But if you start the foreign language earlier, all the better. There are so many different things that you can learn, but the most important is to read and discuss, and to teach them how to read. One of my favorite programs for teaching someone how to read is Rocket Learning. So if you need to teach your children how to read, that's a great one. Look that up. And I also have some other videos on this channel where I talk about how I taught my children how to read. So look up those videos as well. Go on field trips a lot too. So our family did Field Trip Friday. Every single Friday we did our family canon, which was basically our devotional time, and then we would go on a field trip that day. We would go bird watching, hiking, museums, amusement parks, all kinds of neat things that we would do. We would get together with friends and create and build things. We also were part of co-ops, so we would get together with groups of families, maybe 3 families or more, and we would discuss certain things together or study certain topics. We did debate leagues, we did rhetoric classes, we studied drama and Shakespeare. We really developed a community of people who were all doing the same thing together. That's probably another thing. Try to get connected with other people that are doing what you're doing if you can, whether it's digitally or in person, because it does help the family stay the course if they know other people who are trying to do the same thing. Don't second guess yourself. If you missed learning something at a time you thought maybe you should have, there's always time. Learning is a lifetime pursuit, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. Get some craft supplies, make some foods, double or triple or quadruple some recipes, do some service projects. Start learning the basics of history, go to the library, get a big milk crate, take it with you every time, fill it up every single week or two, and then study a new topic every time. You don't have to buy everything under the sun if you have a decent library. There did come a point where I started just buying everything because I realized I was going to come back to the same books again and again, and the library was a little meh. So many libraries are going toward computers and not even really getting classic books anymore. So you know what your library is like. But at first, I could do almost all my schooling just through what I found at the library, or sometimes some good books at library book sales or old curriculum sales. You don't really need a lot of curriculum or textbooks, but if you find some, you can use some a little bit. One thing that I would say is that there are some books by Edie Hirsch. So there's books called What My First Grader Needs to Know, What My Second Grader Needs to Know, What My Fifth Grader Needs to Know. It's all the grades. And then there's another book called The American Dictionary of Cultural Literacy. And they're all by E.D. Hirsch. If your children learn all the things in those books, they will have had a better education than they would ever get at the school. They will be ready for a lot more, a lot sooner. Learn more by going to heartofhomeschool.net, watch the things that I have there, but don't forget that the way that you communicate, whether you're nagging and whether you're getting frustrated and angry and people aren't doing what they need to, that can ruin your homeschool. Usually the very first thing that you should do is get the family communicating well. And I actually have a free course here. If you click the first link, I believe it's the first link, in the description below this video, it says teachselfgov.com/toolkit. Then you can have my Calm Parenting Toolkit for free. It's a beginner toolkit that you can start with for free. It will help you be more calm in your homeschool and start you on the road to learning self-government. Click on the link to that video now. I'll see you there.